Swish, an invisible sword aura separated from the blade. In an instant, dozens of strokes were drawn. It was as if swords were flying all over the sky. The small spirit was immediately cut to pieces by the chaotic swords. With a whoosh, the sword sang. The autumn rain begonia landed in his hand. With his left hand, he pinched a seal, and swung the sword with his right hand. With a shout, a small plum blossom sword aura. But then there was a hiss. The snare lost its power as well. It tore apart on its own, gently drifting down. He could only grit his teeth and summon the flying sword. There was no way to avoid it. He raised his hand and cast a snare. Bang! A wide golden phantom appeared out of thin air. It intercepted the first wave of blood and impact. He suddenly grinned devilishly. With a strange laugh, he let out a chuckle. A torrent of blood surged forth. It came with astonishing speed. At this moment, Lee Sin was in the middle of the corridor. From the flowing blood, the entirely crimson heroic spirit crawled out. On the wrinkled face, 2 little eyes still have a pale color. Upon seeing Lee Sin, that Mei Xiang had committed suicide while pregnant, becoming a vengeful spirit. It wasn't just the mother who failed. After being injured, one becomes stronger, so why not just kill them with one sword strike? Like a baby, even smaller. The infant spirit made Lee Sin's heart tremble. How could there be such a thing? But she soon realized. Thick in texture. It's blood, and his brow furrows. He feels that things are not simple. Sure enough, with the large pool of flowing blood, a small shadow crawled over. She must have been determined to win. I'll go check it out. Lee Sin pushed the door open and stepped out. Immediately, he saw a stream of liquid trickling down the corridor. Crimson in color. He sensed that something was off about this particular wave of cold energy. The usual resentful spirit's energy is about the strength of 200 lantern monsters, but this wave of cold energy was about the strength of 443 lantern monsters. Slightly stronger meaning. Recalling the confident and resolute look in Lee Sin's eyes when she told him not to move earlier. The wind is picking up outside. Li Chu, who was resting with his eyes closed, quietly opened his eyes. A chill swept in. After seeing many haunted houses, he became increasingly sensitive to the intensity of this cold energy. Li Chu glanced at her. Then she nodded. She agreed to let the girls stay in their rooms. They were not allowed to wander. The sky darkened. Lee Sin felt quite displeased. Why do they act like sycophants around Li Chu? Looking at herself, she smiled like a tiger's eye. It felt as if she were just a worthless vase. She had to restore the prestige of the morning sparrow. I'll handle it. Don't move for now. He was afraid that Li Chu would act too quickly. He wouldn't have a chance to show off at all. Just look at Zhao Yangkai or Wang Longqi's expressions. Turned his head and gave Li Chu a sycophantic smile. Lee Sin stood in a corner like a lackey. He squinted his eyes, scrutinizing the few people in the room for a while. Then he pulled Li Chu to the side. He whispered that this time he would take the blood. He muttered in his sleep about things like being handsome and strong. The next morning, with red eyes, he returned to Hangzhou. He said he couldn't reach enlightenment, and would never descend the mountain again in this life. Zhao Yangkai, whether he sensed Li Chu's gaze or something else, you must save me. You have great abilities. Subduing vengeful spirits is definitely not a problem for you. Since returning from the Lu family's haunted building, Zhao Yangchen has been hiding in his room, crying all night. Who knew he'd hold such a grudge? He stammered. And his tone was a bit resentful. As he spoke, he looked at Li Chu with eager eyes. Little Taoist Li, I gave her a silver note worth 1,000 taels, told him to take care of himself. That's not exactly heartless, is it? Whether he accepts it or not, it's enough for him to live well for a while. But now, if I accept her, what would Miss Gongsun think? How would she feel? So yesterday morning, she sent someone to invite me to meet at Chunman Lu, and I refused her. Mei Xiang did say she was pregnant with my child, but how could a courtesan get pregnant so easily? She clearly calculated against me. If she were valuable, it wouldn't be a problem for me to take her as a concubine. It turns out she has already climbed up to another high-status girl. She threw him a glance. Be strong, Mei Xiang. Zhao Yangkai, who was called over, pouted. He sighed deeply. Wang Longji was instantly struck like lightning. He sat down in the chair. It felt almost the same as being cheated on by his wife. And the person she cheated with was his lifelong enemy. No wonder Mei Xiang dares to ignore me. The child truly isn't Master Hua's either. Chun Sanyang pressed for who the other person was. The young maid replied. That person is Zhao Yangkai from the Zhao family. It was him, the young master. You must end things with the previous one first. If violated, there will be severe punishment. The little maid knew nothing of this. In fact, the young lady has had more than just Master Hua as a lover. Chun Sanyang asked. The overall management of Chunmanlo is quite strict. After the macroscopic control relaxed, at any given time, there can only be one favored person. if you want to replace them. Wang Longqi firmly denied. Chun Sanyang furrowed her brow. Then she suddenly looked at the young maid Hongji. The young maid trembled all over. Mei Xiang is still involved with someone else. 2 months ago, Wang Longqi was in the capital. I haven't been here since half a year ago. I haven't seen him since. Let alone any secret meetings. This is absolutely impossible. After hearing this, Wang Longqi's expression changed dramatically. Mei Xiang is pregnant. Li Xian arrives at the Yamen banquet. Miss Mei Xiang is indeed 2 months pregnant. And you only want to send her off with 100 taels of silver. Isn't that a bit too callous? You don't even realize this. And you still call yourself righteous. Those who know will think you are humiliating our girl. Spring Mistress listened. Her face changed. Which old hag is badmouthing him behind his back? I'll make sure to teach them a lesson when I return. But young Master Wang Qi, you made her pregnant. Since the lady could disperse her resentment over a face she didn't recognize. Maybe purifying the resentment isn't that hard after all. Just forget it. When Wang Longqi shrinks back, just give him a quick end. I'll visit his grave later and explain it slowly. After Li Chu heard his words, he thought for a moment and said, if he comes to find you tonight, you could try explaining things to him. Maybe you can purify his resentment. In his view, tell me, after I've treated him like this, you could say I've done all I could, right? Yet he was still complaining about me before he died. He even turned into a vengeful spirit to seek revenge on me. That's really a bit hard to accept. But just as I was about to agree, I suddenly remembered that once Zhao Yangkai finds out I've been to Chunmanlo lately, he will definitely badmouth me in front of Miss Gongsun. So I said we should reschedule. And I just had the maid bring 100 taels of silver back to her. That person is Mei Xiang. Li Chu nodded. After all, we have been friends for many years. He is heartless, but I have feelings. He even asked me out yesterday morning. I have no idea why Mei Xiang holds a grudge against me. It wasn't me who abandoned her after leading her on. Wang Longqi swore to Li Chu. Do you remember the other day when I told you that there were some officials and old guards at Chunmanlu talking behind my back? He naturally has to protect Wang Longqi's life, to prevent the people from being harmed by vengeful spirits. But from a woman's perspective, she utterly despises Wang Longqi's shameless behavior. Heaven and earth bear witness. Wang Longqi scoffed. If it weren't for your ungratefulness, abandoning me after seducing me, how would I end up like this? From the standpoint of Chaotian Palace, I ran into bad luck as soon as I stepped out. Things are different. It's all good now. I can't believe something like this happened while I'm staying at home. Li Sini, right? But being cold and indifferent to me? As soon as Wang Longqi from Chunmanlo saw Director Li, he rushed over, hugging his leg, wailing, Director Li, do you think I'm just unlucky lately? Cold and ruthless. Just forget about it. Who is the 7th young master of the Wang family, Wang Longqi? What if someone treats others differently, fawning over others? Who is the person he wants to take revenge on the most? The little maid sniffled a couple of times. After thinking for a moment, she said that the young lady did indeed scold someone last night. Heartless and ungrateful. Mei Xiang hadn't suffered any grievances in her daily life. Even if there were some unpleasant things, where would such great resentment come from? That's what I want to ask you. Li Sini said, who has Mei Xiang held grudges against in her daily life? She still cried uncontrollably. Li Sini remained silent for a moment. Then we can conclude that after Mei Xiang's death, she would turn into a vengeful spirit. Spring San Yang shook her head and said it wasn't right. There were attendants both inside and out. Mei Xiang's maid was also summoned. The little maid was only about 12 or 13 years old, although she had already been scared for a while. When questioned, the interior of Chunmanlo was vast. They had walked quite a distance. Only then did they reach Mei Xiang's bedroom. She was one of the Red Guardians. Mei Xiang's bedroom was spacious and elegant. Li Chu also said seriously, that's really unnecessary. Li Sini immediately smiled. She pulled him away, leaving Bai Luo standing alone in the wind, looking lost. She smiled and said, if the young Taoist is interested, then it wouldn't hurt to let him take a look. The implication was rather intriguing. Just listen and enjoy. You said before, whoever sees your face will be the one you have to marry. The girl in the green robe stood up. Her clothes fluttered in the wind by the Disaster River Pavilion. Do you want to see my face? His voice was soft, gentle and pleasant to hear. But that's not possible. Chun-san quickly shook her head. Oh, Li responded with a sound, and wanted to keep walking, ignoring the music. Upon hearing this, Miss Bailu put away her delicate fingers, and asked the young Taoist. Chun-san Yang smiled and said, this is Miss Bailuo, our newly promoted courtesan. But Miss Bailu only performs, she doesn't sell her body. Not to mention selling her body, she won't even show her face. He felt that this woman looked a bit different. But he couldn't quite say what was different. Looking closely, there was an extra layer of veil covering her face. making it hard to see her features. Passing by the submarine, they saw the zither player on the terrace in the center of the attic. It was a woman dressed in light brown gauze. Li Chu stopped abruptly in surprise. He paused for a moment. Please show some respect. Alright, please follow me upstairs. Chun Sanyang acknowledged with a sound. As soon as they went upstairs, they heard a pleasant melody of a zither. With an unfriendly gaze, with a stern face, she said that it was concluded that Miss Mei Xiang had committed suicide. We came for other matters. This is Taoist priestly from the Yun Temple. I specifically invited him to exorcise evil spirits. The body has been taken care of. Why are you here again? Oh, and you brought such a handsome young Taoist with you. Are you here to perform a ceremony for Mei Xiang? Li Sini looked at his overly flattering demeanor. The owner of Chunmanlo, Madame Chun, already met Li Sini this morning. She smiled, her eyes curved like crescent moons, and said, Lordly, didn't the authorities already investigate? They confirmed that Mei Xiang committed suicide. It seems the newcomer carries a certain authority. Li Sini finally breathed a sigh of relief. She looked toward the crowd, in the direction where they parted. It was Chun Sanyang who came. What's going on? What's going on? Looking like someone who had never seen the world before, a lazy voice came from behind the crowd. The group of good girls immediately restrained their behavior. They all stepped back. The girls in the brothel don't care about that. In the blink of an eye, a crowd of flirtatious women surrounded Li Chu, chattering away. They were just about to reach out and touch him. This infuriated Li Sini. Li Chu entered the pleasure house. It's not a matter of looking at random. It's a matter of being looked at randomly. In other places, even if a woman sees a handsome man, she may develop feelings. At most, just a shy glance. Li Chu nodded. Come in, the spring pavilion. The girl inside immediately turned around. She screamed, sisters. Come quickly. Li Sini is really here. Yesterday, he suddenly hanged himself. In his hand, he was clutching a ghost coin. Standing outside the elegant, refined pavilion, Li Sini pouted slightly and reminded them before entering. Don't let your eyes wander. Li Sini responded, Chunmanlo. Chunmanlo is the only brothel in Yuhang town. The deceased this time was named Ruan Hongmei. His stage name was Mei Xiang. He was the popular entertainer at Chunmanlo. Half of it was indeed out of a desire to uphold the peace of Yuhang town. At least a small part of it. Alright, then let's go take a look now. The deceased, Li Jini, quickly stood up. Where to? Li Chu asked. There would be an additional bonus. Li Chu nodded. It was all very casual. With Xiao Yu's ability to pick up money, he agreed to help this time, so he didn't think much of it. He just nodded and agreed. Li Sini's face immediately broke into a smile. He proactively mentioned that the reward would be given as before, if they can catch the true culprit behind the scenes. Li Sini looked at the young Taoist's handsome profile. Someone died again yesterday. It's also related to this copper coin. Can you come help me? Li Chu had been feeling a bit bored these past few days. As long as we only pick it up and don't spend it, we'll be fine. If Xiaoya, after hearing this story, becomes afraid to pick up money when she goes out in the future, that would be a big loss. He is now the key figure in revitalizing the Yunguan. After listening to Li Sini finish speaking, Xiaoya shrank her shoulders in fear. She whispered, so picking up someone else's money can get you killed. Yu Xian quickly patted the little girl's shoulder. He comforted her, saying, don't be afraid, Yu. It really was a bit of an unwarranted event. He spent someone else's money to buy his life, and ended up giving his own life in return. It's fortunate he bore no resentment. Otherwise he might have turned into a vengeful spirit. At Madame Shue's case investigation scene, these copper coins also appeared. They were found by Li Chu. He became Xiao Wei. As for the death of that constable, this is an extremely evil ghost book. It specifically manipulates people harboring grudges. Ghosts use these coins to buy a person's intentions. After death, they transform into vengeful spirits to seek revenge. So the copper coins are linked to the previous two vengeful spirit cases. Ethereal yet undeniably real. Passed down since ancient times. Every manifestation brings great calamity. In Si Tong Bao is the copper coin of the Ghost King. It's also known as the money for a life. The information received was that In Si Tong Bao was a type of ghost money. This kind of money bought life at the cost of one's own. Do you dare to use it? The ghostly realm of the living. Legend has it that it's a kingdom formed by countless haunted houses left in the human world. Later, it was found that the cause of death was related to the copper coins he picked up next to Chen Yingying's body. Normal copper coins are inscribed with Hello Tongbao. However, among these copper coins, there was one inscribed with In Si Tongbao. This inscription had never been seen before. Li Sini reported it to the authorities. He had just turned around when he suddenly dropped dead. He died without any warning. The other constable was so shocked that he froze. It took him a long while before he finally shouted to call for a coffin. I remembered that I was an officer. Has returned because of a new case. The incident happened the day after the exorcism in Xiaoyu village. At that time, Li Sini had not yet set off to return to Hangzhou prefecture. Two constables were buying sesame buns together on their way to the office in the morning. Who would have thought that after one of the constables took the bun, when her gaze fell to the girl's chest again, that tension immediately dissolved the atmosphere. Heroes have always loved the high mountains, and enjoy hearing gallant horses tread the plains. Li Sini, in this lifetime, is Taoist Xiaoli here? The arrival of Li Sini from the Dian temple broke the tranquility. Li Sini saw Xiaoyu sitting next to Li Chu. The girl's delicate face and bright eyes made her gaze appear indifferent. But a tension, as if facing a great enemy, arose. In less than 2 months, the people of King Wu will be killed off by him. It seems we can only speed up the process of breaking the seal. As long as King Wu returns to the mortal realm, all enemies will pay their blood debts in blood. Tonight, I organized a group of elites to resist. The outcome was no different. All were killed in one strike. I suspect the little Taoist may not have even noticed their strength has changed. At this rate, he had only just passed the 72nd level last night, but by the end of tonight, he was already close to the 73rd level. Whitebone Mountain is not a cave. 2 Sima faces, 2 deep voices. Then solemnly said, please make sure to stay at Dian Pass. In the evening, Li Chu went to the Lu family's haunted house again. Lin's fortune-changing ability is not just about helping people find money. When Li Chu arrived at the Lu family's haunted house, he found that tonight the experience points for exorcising the haunted house were particularly high. For some reason, every time I go ashore, I always pick up these things. I think the shiny stuff looks pretty nice, so I kept all of it. Li Chu gave him a deep look, and pulls out a small pouch. Bala pours out a pile of scattered silver and copper coins. There's even a little gold fish as thick as a finger. How does an aquatic creature like you have so much money? I found it, Yuer says in a casual tone. Finding money is always something to be happy about, right? Rather than just sitting around. Exactly. Is that so? Then I'll give all of this to you. Yue reaches into her unremarkable little chest. Yu Qian cleared his throat lightly. People on the spiritual path don't care much about money. Even Zhe Chu agreed seriously. Wealth is just an external thing. But, this is the first time we've dug up money. Yu Qian looked at Xiaoyu with kind eyes. It seems the Yunguan is truly about to turn its luck around. Do you all like this thing a lot? Xiaoya kept looking at him with innocent, beautiful big eyes. Inside, there was actually a box of silver, completely full. It's probably almost 100 taels, or pure joy from finding treasure. The Dayun temple has been established for some years now. It has seen its share of activity before. It looked quite old. The cover was damaged, covered in dirt. I don't know how long it has been buried underground. I took it and opened it. Before long, someone from the east side came over carrying a small box. Daoist Yu, Daoist Li. This was dug up beneath the old wall. It should have been buried by someone from your temple in the past, right? Uncle Li glanced at the box that was brought over, still feeling that something was off. Suddenly, there was an additional member in the group. This is a big deal. The master and apprentice were about to discuss how to arrange things going forward. He suddenly heard a commotion among the workers over there. It can help you increase your fortune. The stronger your fortune, the greater his cultivation can suffer. It's a win-win situation. But Li Chu frowned slightly. Yu Qian reminded. The so-called recognition of the koi doesn't mean becoming your servant. It means binding your fortune. After recognizing the master, gave him a look, telling him to turn around. Acknowledging a master in Jinli is a tremendous opportunity. There are many benefits. Just accept it. In the end, he still nodded slightly. Humph, anyway, Grandpa told me to acknowledge him as my master. Miss Yuer. Li Chu wanted to say something. Yu Qian tugged at his sleeve. Wait until we have clues about your kin. Then we can go rescue them. Is that okay? Yu's gaze lingered on the master and disciple for a moment. Feeling a bit conflicted. It seems you have just taken form, and are not yet accustomed to human memory, Qian said with a smile. In that case, you should stay for now. The moon stared with her innocent and beautiful big eyes, vacant for a while. She struggled to recall memories in her mind, but she quickly realized that the more she searched her mind, the less she found. But my grandfather said that only you can save them, Yuer finally says pitifully. Li Chu falls silent. Yu Qian is speechless. Little girl, what do you remember? I don't know, I don't recognize them. Yuer shakes her head. Then how do you expect me to save your people? Li Chu finally asks. I don't know, but Li Chu Dao doesn't know. They were taken by bad people. Yuer shook her head. Then who are the people that took them? Li Chu is asking, but she quickly became downcast again, when Koi Yu Qian heard this. His eyes lit up even more. There's no rush on the others. First, tell me where they are. That old man is my grandfather. He's also the leader of the koi clan. I'm the most beautiful colorful koi in our group. When Yuer said this, she lifted her nose slightly, a bit proud. Do you want it? I just want to say, I want a dozen of such koi. After getting rid of the water ghost that day, an old man transformed from a koi once appeared in a dream to express gratitude to Li Chu. After you dealt with that water ghost, he came to thank you. You are not human. Li Chu suddenly remembered who he was talking about. The koi that can pick up money every day. Li Chu tilted his head, feeling a bit confused. Master Yu Zian quickly grasped the main point. A spark of interest appeared in his eyes. Young girl, Yu Dao, my grandfather said he has seen you. The girl said seriously, word by word. My name is Yuer. My grandfather said to come to Yuhang town to find a very handsome little Taoist, to recognize him as my master. Only he can save our people. Her body bouncing back. A small red mark suddenly appeared on his forehead. Ah, it hurts. He covered his forehead and squatted down. Is something wrong? Li Chu asked. He calmly reached out a single finger. His index finger poking the girl's forehead, completely stopping her forward momentum. The girl collided with Li Chu's finger, and paused for a moment, covered in dust. Li Chu calmly stood up. Seeing the girl who was extremely excited to see him, this wasn't her first time encountering him, just as the girl was about to lunge at him. His expression was very emotional. He was shouting, Master, with his arms outstretched. The tassels fluttered. His hair was disheveled, that he was somewhat reluctant to show, but he wasn't worried about losing them, so he insisted on staying. Suddenly, hurried footsteps came from behind the supervisor. Li Chu turned around and saw a dazzlingly white young girl running toward him. Master, I can supervise the work by myself. Please take a break. Yu Qianan initially refused. Although there wasn't anything valuable in the museum, he did have some private collections. Li Chu won't have to squeeze in with the master. The whole courtyard is under construction. The master and apprentice had no choice but to move their small stools outside the main gate, sitting side by side, watching the busy scene inside. Their faces showed the same happy smile. But he already had workers arranged for the temple. Every building in Dian Temple had to be renovated. The front and back courtyards were fully redone. They even added a guest room. This way, when guests come in the future, then I remembered that I was praying. Pray that he doesn't come back tomorrow. Wang Longqi works very efficiently. The day after returning from the Lu family's haunted house, his wounds hadn't healed yet. You wouldn't say such foolish things. We have to do something. Otherwise, on the day our king is unsealed, you and I will both be held accountable. Another voice fell silent again. Killing them one by one. In just one night's time. He has cleared the entire ghost building. What can you do about him? If you had seen him when we first met. White Bone Mountain Floating World Cave. Two hoarse and muffled voices sounded again. This time, they clearly carried a tone of panic. That little Taoist has come back to kill. He is knocking on doors one by one to find ghosts. A flash of sword light passed by. The tune of Yi Yaya still echoed in the room. Yet the ghostly figure disappeared into thin air. It had all transformed successfully. Li Chu felt a bit more elevated. Bear with it for a moment, and it'll be over soon. The ghost of the opera seemed to understand his words. It wanted to physically express its opposition. But Li Chu did not give it the chance. Officer Li listened closely. He felt that this opera ghost was a bit improper, but he still greeted it politely, saying, Hello, I'm here to release you. It might hurt a little. Seeing Li Chu come in, he screeches in a high-pitched voice, Pain, pain, pain. Please push the wolf. His voice trembles as he hears it. The aura was fierce and overwhelming. Seems like there is. Li Chu pushes the door open and walks in. He sees a ghost house dressed like a spirit, wearing a spring mountain water robe. It's hard to tell if it's a man or a woman, but as a figure in a blue Taoist robe slowly approaches, the scene takes on a bit of beauty. Li Chu begins knocking on the doors in order, starting from the first room. Excuse me, is there a ghost in here? Strange, muffled sounds come from inside. Watching Li Chu get up and leave, Yu Qian murmured to his back, wondering which ghost was so unfortunate. That night at the Lu family's haunted house, last night's disturbance seems to have had no effect here. The atmosphere is still just as peaceful yet eerie. Guidance can accumulate merit. Whether they have spiritual intelligence or not, it cannot be considered killing. If Li Chu gains something, he also nodded slightly. For both devils and demons, there is no need to ask about good or evil. Upon encountering them, they must be eliminated. And because of this, eliminating demons is called salvation, and thus remain in the human world. From the moment they were born, they have already gone astray. So in any situation, eliminating demons is the same as helping them return to the right path. If left to survive in the human world, it will surely cause great bloodshed and massacre. The red wall must be eradicated. The haunted house is also formed from the spirits of other beings, who, for various reasons, have not entered the cycle of reincarnation, as if in deep thought. And the monsters are formed from other beings transformed. Xian's expression is somewhat serious. Once they fall into darkness, impossible to trace back. If they keep to themselves, then humanity should not disturb them, because they have their own path to follow. Their own path, murmuring to themselves, with a body leaning forward, showing a posture of eager inquiry. This means that monsters and spirits are actually different. Monsters and spirits themselves are not inherently good or evil. We can educate and guide them. Li Chu thought for a moment at Qi En's question, and slowly replied, we cultivators wander the martial world. There is a saying that monsters can be befriended. But devils are difficult. Although he doesn't understand the purpose, he is aware of the action. But these ghostly creatures are more powerful, and they already have intelligence. They're different from the lantern monster. Haven't you been doing this all along? Yu Qi encountered. This past year, Li Chu's been grinding levels by killing small monsters at Shirley Slope. Without humans disturbing them, they won't harm anyone either. So, can I go and wipe out this group of haunted houses? Li Chu asked seriously. Li Chu almost forgot his purpose. Oh, what a master. I have a question. If there is a group of ghosts, and they stay peacefully in one place, he is under the command of Keodiank. We previously worked together on a ghost case. That 50 taels is the reward I deserve. Master, the disciple has something to ask. Being diverted in Xian. Oh, there's a mole on her left chest. Yu Jian added. Li Chu is even more confused. By the way, he also left 50 taels of silver. Li Sini and Li Chu immediately recalled. It's because her waist is very slim. Long legs, full chest, round hips. She's got a great figure. Li Chu shook her head. She can't remember. All this fruit was sent over by Miss Li yesterday. She came to see you. I just got lucky. Miss Li's name is rather obscure. I forgot. I thought to myself, my apprentice looks so handsome and charming while eating watermelon. Just a little lean and a wipe of the mouth. He really has my style from back in the day. He pinched his beard. He smiled and said, what thanks. He exuded an indescribable aura. Hey, have a piece. Yu Qinan said with a smile. Thank you, master. Yu Qinan looked at Li Chu. Under the old locust tree, Yu Qianan was sitting by the well, eating watermelon. Li Shu walked over. He saw that master even looked ethereal and majestic while eating watermelon. With one sleeve rolled up and a chunk in hand, because he couldn't sense where the yin energy was coming from. It seemed to appear out of thin air. It's always the ghosts knocking at midnight. But have you ever seen a person knock at the ghost gate in broad daylight? Zhao Liangchen nodded. The yin energy here is just too strong. There are definitely more than a few of those hulking creatures. There might even be one in every room. Li Chu felt a bit strange. How could that be? Li Chu doesn't really want to leave. After all, he was paid. My cousin is the strongest disciple of the Falai sect. There's no mistake in listening to him. I just sense the presence of a vengeful spirit. There's something strange about this building. We shouldn't stay here long. Little Daoist Li, let's leave together. The ghost child lunging toward Zhao Liangkai was instantly split in half and vanished. It disappeared completely. That single strike caused the 5 wailing ghost children to suddenly fall silent. 6 little braids sticking straight up to the sky. Zhao Liangchen, deliberately lagging behind, finally arrives. Immediately, he leaped into the air and rushed toward Zhao Liangcai's retreating figure. Suddenly, Li Chu, who was holding Gongsun Ro in his arms, withdrew the iron tip from behind his back. Then, he swung his sword. The sword rose and fell. The sword king flashed past. The little kid flipped midair in a twist. His brows furrowed. Just now, Zhao Liangcai's momentum was so intense, that for a moment he didn't dare to act rashly. Now he snapped back to reality. It instantly transformed into a heavy Peking opera. He threw away the ghostly object in his hand, turned around and ran. He came in so domineering, but fled so pathetically. Zhao Liangcai leaned in to look inside the room. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Zhao Liangcai's pupils dilated. So this one in my hand is him. After a brief confusion, its wrinkled face seemed to express a look of confusion. Hey, Zhao Liangcai frowned slightly, feeling a bit puzzled. The 5 little ghost faces just now don't seem this small. Wow, that little kid was lifted up by him. Held in his hand was a completely bright red baby that appeared to be small in size. With blood flowing profusely all over its body, he was holding it by one arm, which hung limply. He shouted loudly. He stood tall and proud. His energy was focused. He stepped forward and twisted his waist. His shoulders relaxed with his elbows. How dare you disturb Miss Gongsun in this haunted house? It's truly contemptible. After saying that, he actually charged forward boldly. He grabbed that chubby arm. Zhao Liangcai felt he had never experienced such a bold moment. Instead, it makes people feel eerie. Hee, you really know how to set the mood. Zhao Yangkai smiled faintly. Then he immediately put on an indignant expression. He shouted loudly, I'm coming. He glanced over. I saw a child standing at the door. Mother, dear mother. Don't kill me. In Sin Yuyu's room, the cries of winter solstice elicited no sympathy. Over there, Zhao Yangkai heard the commotion. He turned around and glanced at Brother Tang. I received a look of encouragement. Then I immediately dashed out, shouting, Miss Gongsun. Then, wow, they actually sat on the ground and started crying together. Watching the kids cry their hearts out, Li Chu blinked. He blinked his eyes. A thought flashed through his mind, extortion. I didn't even lift a finger. Then they covered their faces. With a crunch, 5 crisp sounds rang out almost simultaneously. A few little ghosts let go. They covered their own teeth. Finally, he incredulously touched the wound from the broken tooth. Then, crunch. Immediately after, 4 small figures charged forward without hesitation. They wrapped their arms tightly around Li Chu's arms and legs. Then they opened their mouths and bit down viciously. Their expressions were extremely fierce. Floating in midair, the sound of a little girl biting him could be heard. A figure in a red cotton jacket was the first to leap onto Li Chu's shoulder. She bared her gleaming teeth, and bit down hard. Wasn't right about that, but before he could figure it out, he saw 4 or 5 eerie little ghosts. They all look like children. But their faces are pale, trembling. What the hell is that? Director Li, did you see that? Director Li calmly said, don't worry, it's just a ghost. Wang Longqi vaguely felt something. It was as if a group of children were playing in the room. It seemed like someone even tripped Wang Longqi. He almost fell. Ah! Wang Longqi let out a startled cry. He jumped to Li Chu's side in one leap. The door suddenly flew open. Gongsun Ro ran in, shouting, there's a ghost. She fell into Li Chu's arms. Suddenly, the sound of children's laughter filled the room. Not just one. Wang Longqi has been chattering non-stop in his ear, seeming to hint at something. Was he trying to make Gongsun Ro in the next room hear it? Then you should stand by the wall and speak. Just as he was considering whether to knock out the boring Wang Longqi. And what loyalty means. Ah, Li Chu frowned, watching Wang Longqi pace around like a lovesick tomcat. He thought it was going to be a long, difficult night, ever since they entered the room. From that moment on, I decided that I would marry no one but her. To this day, I've been intensely practicing with her for 2 whole days. It was after meeting her that I understood what love is. In another room, Wang Longqi was dramatically expressing how deep his feelings for Gongsun Ro were. The first time I met Miss Gongsun was at a banquet the day before yesterday. She was dressed in white, like a fairy descending from the heavens. Go, the instructions are clear. 5 little dolls lined up in a row. Their footsteps barely touched the ground, quietly floating out. When I reached the wall, the door wouldn't open. In a flash, I just passed through. Listen up. There's a beautiful girl staying in the room downstairs. Don't be too harsh. Just scare them a little, that's enough. I'll be waiting outside. What did you eat? All you think about is eating. Zhao Yangchen frowned and snorted. The few little ghosts across from him sensed his unfriendly tone. They immediately stood up straight from the smoke. They usually don't cause much harm. When the white mist finally disperses, the child ghosts raised their heads. Then Zhao Yangkai heard a bright and crisp, excited, and uniform inquiry. Have you eaten? Children of this age often draw ghosts, because they died before they could really enjoy the pleasures of life. So they feel a sense of resentment, but children's hearts are simple. Their grudge isn't strong. I happened to catch them some time ago. Zhao Yangchen said. Zhao Yang had vaguely heard some rumors about the 5 fortune ghosts. Children who died before the age of 8. It's called above the 5 blessings. And those small figures became clearer. There are 4 boys and 1 girl. They're all wearing thick clothes. They look like they're made of paper. The 5 fortune ghosts are also called child ghosts. They were buried against their knees. Zhao Yangkai watched in fear, thinking they were real ghosts. Have you ever seen someone fake an injury like this? Biting someone and ending up breaking their own teeth? The white mist slowly dissipated, and tilted it downward. A thick white mist, resembling sheep's fat, began to flow out, quickly filling half of the room. Several small figures gradually appeared in the white mist. Each one, whether human or not, was curled up with their knees held tightly. Should we make a move as well? Zhao Yangchen, upon hearing this, pulled out a small black bottle from his sleeve. To deal with them, these little ghosts will suffice. He removed the cork sealing the bottle of fulu. He couldn't help but feel a chill down his spine. As night began to fall, his unease grew stronger. His cousin leaned over and asked, "What did you say earlier about scaring them with some trick?" Now it's already dark. The rooms are spotless. The beds, screens, and desks are all clean and tidy. It's as if someone cleans every day. They've already split up the rooms. Zhao Liangkai sat in a chair. Attic occupies a very large area. It's just cleverly designed, so that it doesn't appear large from the outside. Each floor has more than a dozen rooms arranged around it. The building seems to be well preserved. If I were to throw myself into little Daoist Li's arms, wouldn't that be perfectly justified? Looking at the Lu family haunted house from afar, it didn't seem very big, but after entering, I realized that this 4-story. I'll go in with you. Gong Sun Ro glanced at Li Chu's profile again. Her heart unknowingly skipped a beat twice. She thought to herself, in an environment like this, Daoist Li saved my life. Both spoke simultaneously, looking at Officer Li. Gong Sun Ro's eyes shifted. Since you say it was because of my bet. He couldn't help but think that this was bad. He forced a stiff smile. Li Chu, Miss Gong Sun, do you know each other? We've crossed paths. In an instant it turned into uncontrollable joy. Li Chu nodded at him. He greeted him. Miss Gong Sun. Wang Longqi's heart sank. Daoist Li. The promise he had just prepared, with that greeting, seemed to melt away like snow. Clouds parted, mist dispersed, but he quickly noticed another figure. His expression suddenly unified. Gong Sun Ro blinked twice quickly. Seemingly surprised, seemingly delighted. What brings you here to see me? The news that you guys made a bet to spend the night at Ghost Tower has already spread around town. I can't just sit by and do nothing. As he walked over, his eyes shifted back and forth between Wang Longji and Zhao Liangkai, her garments fluttering. There's a sense of independence in her presence. This person, Li Chu has seen before. Surprisingly, it's Gong Sun Ro, Miss Gong Sun. He was wearing a blue and white long robe, dressed in a tasseled jacket with a front opening, with features like a painting. The lady is Gong Sun Ro, standing in the breeze. The two of them were bickering. Just as they were about to walk down the slope, they suddenly heard someone shout from the top of the slope, "Stop!" They looked up. They saw a tall figure standing there. We'll spend the night inside. Whoever runs away loses. After tonight, let's see if you dare to compete with me for my wife. Wang Longqi, cold wind. Wang Longqi, you really dare to come. Now, while it's still light out, let's hurry inside. As we agreed, let's each pick a room. The two walked to the Lu family's haunted house. They saw Zhao Liangkai and an ugly-looking Taoist waiting there. The Taoist was Zhao Liangcai's cousin, Zhao Liangchen. As soon as Zhao Liangkai saw him, Wang Longqi shouted, "This time I'll renovate the entire Dian temple for you. And expand the temple's size by double." He raised his head. He slowly said, "It's not about the money. We are friends, right? You're the only one who can help me now." Li Chu calmly pulled his sleeve back. "This feels like trouble." Wang Longqi saw the hesitation on his face. He immediately said, "Help me, and if we see each other on the road, we'll keep our distance. We can each bring one person along with us. I naturally thought of you first. Li Chu, we are friends, right?" Wang Longqi grabbed Li Chu's sleeve. "He made a bet with me. Let's both spend a night in that haunted building. Let's see who can come out unscathed. If anyone is too scared to stay, then they'll lose and can never compete for any girls again." In a fit of anger, "I made a bet with him. You know that haunted building by the Lu family's memorial arch? His family bought up that whole piece of land, but no one dares touch the haunted building. This morning, we had an unfortunate encounter. He even brought up the time I was possessed by a ghost. You don't hit someone in the face, and you don't insult someone by exposing their flaws, but that despicable Zhao Liangkai just had to interfere. He actually took a liking to this girl too. He should take a look at himself, see what a disgrace he is. Dare to compete with me, a young master. The girl I met this time, regardless of her background, appearance, conversation, or temperament, is perfect in ways I've never seen before." At that moment, I made up my mind. I will marry no one but her, because I've recently fallen for a girl. And since I'm now forced to leave the martial world, upon careful thought, I've had my fun over the years. It's time to find an honest girl to settle down. Li Chu listened to his long rant. He nodded. Then calmly looked at him. "Did you come to me for something?" "I came to see you this time." He must have been dressed all fancy in the middle of the night. That's why the female ghost targeted him. After so many days, when he recalled it, still couldn't help but tear up. What a pity, such a rich young master. How did a ghost end up defiling him? This man is unclean now. Who would dare want him in the future? Humph, flies don't land on eggs without cracks. When a person eats it, it's like stealing offerings from a grave. How could that be good? Ugh, stop talking about it. It's creepy. Whoever wants to go, can go. I won't do business with him. The girls in the brothel have started to look down on him. He even eavesdropped on a whispered conversation between a red official and a laborer at Chunman Tower. That thing has been used by a ghost. Isn't it unlucky? Of course. It's food eaten by a ghost. Wang Longqi and Li Chu have a past. As soon as he saw this, Li Chu immediately rushed over and started crying. The news about him and the ghost bride has spread. What made him feel somewhat desperate was that, and a second-generation rich kid from the area, although he lacks ambition, with a family background like his, and decent looks. He's always been quite popular with the ladies. Maybe I should find him a marriage arrangement. The person in front of him is named Wang Longqi. Because he had a life and death connection with the ghost bride, he is respectfully called Seventh of the Dead by many men. He is the seventh young master of the Wang family in Yuhang town. This disciple is perfect in every way, respectful, filial, and polite. He even looks like me. It's just that his mind is a bit strange. Taoist Yu thought to himself, aren't tongues always forked? It's not unusual for it to be forked in the mouth, but if it transforms into a human, and it's still forked, that's, well. Yu Qian let out a slight sigh. Its tongue sticks out and is 8 inches long, he explained, and added another sentence. It's even forked. Li Chu muttered. Yu Qian, that old pervert even waved his arm in the air like a wave. It's not a snake, but a snake transformed into human form. The body is soft and slippery. It feels like there's no bones. It just happened that the trend was the femme fatale. In those years, the powerful in Chaoga, whose family didn't change. It's embarrassing to go out with a snake spirit as a pet. Li Chu always thought it was pretty bizarre to keep a snake as a pet. And the rabbit mother too. The butterfly fairy. A trend comes and goes. It seems like recently, the trend is wings. When I was young, I traveled around. Cat, second mother, fox spirit, mermaid, Yu Qian mutters. Who wouldn't be moved? Li Chu blinks. Cat, fox, fish. He twirls his beard. Not sure how his cultivation is progressing. He really has a way of doing business. The monster Li Chu looks a bit puzzled. Hee, Yu Qian smiles. They do this to trade for special privileges with the court officials. In recent years, their influence has grown larger and larger. More and more disciples are joining. And more monsters are coming to pay their respects. Yu Qian, who is thriving, looks out the window. They prefer a life of freedom. But to survive the heavenly tribulation, countless demons serve as slaves to the Windward sect. This shows how great the allure of transformation is for demons. Feng Zhengpai sends monsters to Zhaoga City every year in exchange for privileges that other sects do not have. Any demon wanting to be conferred must meet them. They all must sign the blood contract. After transformation, they serve as slaves in the gate for 100 years. Only after a century can they be free. Most demons are born free by nature. It is the method of wind, passed down from ancient times. It attracts demon entities. To gain divine powers, demon beings under the wind sect face almost no risks when crossing the tribulation. However, the conditions set by the wind sect are extremely harsh. Creatures protected by sects or powerful figures receive a lot of support during their tribulation, and their chances of success greatly increase. As the saying goes, one relies on a big tree for shade. Among the 12 immortal sects, there is a righteous sect dedicated to the wind. It might add a bit of good fortune, but it won't be the decisive factor. Some creatures, in order to successfully transform, will join immortal sects, or follow powerful beings, to increase their chances of survival. They usually seek some pathways, like praying to Buddha in temples, or worshipping gods in shrines. These are all common practices. A demon transforming is no easy feat. Yu Qian sighed. Facing the heavenly tribulation, at least 50% of the creatures will die during their transformation. He has never committed any harmful acts. Let him be. When he successfully transforms one day, he'll be friendly to humans. He'll also be our Yizhuang princess. Humans are the supreme beings of all creation, cultivating in human form, with numerous intentions. Dare to pay respects to the 3 pure ones. This shows that he's a righteous demon. In Xi'an, it is said that monsters can transform. One must undergo the heavenly tribulation to be baptized. Only then can the transformation succeed, and suppress the demonic aura. Transform into a human form. What's kneeling in the hall before the 3 pure ones is actually a wild fox. A wild fox worshipping a ghost. It seems he is about to transform. He comes to seek the protection of the 3 pure ones. From now on, he might be seen every day, like a fluffy ball of blood. His front paws were pressed together, resting under his head, with eyes tightly closed, seemingly praying for something. The master's realm is definitely beyond what one can estimate. One day, a special visitor came to Dian Pavilion. He was tall and slender, with fur as white as snow. He lay there. What good would that do? Disciple, do not focus on that. Li Chu blindly nodded and said he understood. In fact, he didn't understand at all. He only understood one thing. Yu Qian slowly said, I cultivate. Cultivating the state of mind, instead of the physical realm. If one is stuck in cultivation, it would be like moving mountains and overturning the sea. Is the transition from man to heaven. This mystical realm is the path to heaven. It is said to sever the body, Chi Si, divine harmony, transforming dragon, myriad forms, cutting off the palace of iron. Master, your disciple dares to ask. He tentatively asked, not knowing what realm Master is currently in. Speak freely. Li Chu sat down across from him. He asked, I wish to know, what is the heavenly realm of wonders? The heavenly realm of wonders refers to the 7 major realms a cultivator must usually go through. What is called heaven and man? He exudes an air of great mastery. Li Chu stepped forward. Respectfully, Master. Your disciple has something to ask. Yu Qian smiled faintly, in a genuine manner, sitting under a tree. He does not say a word, as his gaze shifts, from the strands of hair to the soles of his feet. No, not at all. Li Sini elongated her tone, do you prefer me with my hair tied up, or do you like me with my hair down? Back at the Diyun Pass, the master, with an air of, still uses a return to simplicity. Li Chu said seriously, I'm not that impressive. Humph. Being able to display such strong sword energy, and you still say you're not impressive. Li Sini snorted. She then asked, are you intentionally hiding your true energy fluctuations? Li Chu's instinct told him, this question was a trap. He refused to answer. Li Sini asked again, little Taoist priest, why are you so skilled? He looked more approachable now. Walking side by side with Li Chu, he smiled and asked, little Taoist priest, do you like it when I wear my hair up? Or when I let it down? Then he turned back and smiled. He hopped and skipped towards them. At this moment, with his long hair draped over his shoulders, Li Fang appeared a little less heroic, and a bit more graceful. It's nothing, he shook his head. Then he lifted the red scarf. With a flick of his hand, he let it drift away in the wind. Li Chu watched his movements. He silently looked in the direction where Hong Ling was drifting. Reaching out, he pulled off the red ribbon that tied his hair. He shook his head. His long hair flowed down. It was incredibly smooth. Li Shu turned to look at him, wondering what was wrong. The master often shows this kind of smile, but luckily, the vengeful spirit was dealt with. As they stepped out of the courtyard, Li Sini suddenly stopped. He looked at the empty courtyard. As long as he smiled like this at the person asking questions, even if he didn't understand anything, they would still think he was impressive. Then he stopped asking. Normally, when he asks the master questions, Ping A Li Sini muttered at once. I can't understand what this name means at all. Li Chu didn't want to say much either. He just looked at Li Sini and gave a mysterious smile. He learned this from his master, Yu Qianan. He hadn't really considered this, but seeing Li Sini's serious expression, he hesitated. After a slight pause, he slowly said, this move is called a basic attack. Any trickery became meaningless. Li Sini, somewhat shocked, asked, what is the name of this sword technique? He felt that such a powerful sword aura couldn't be just an ordinary move. It might even be some kind of legendary energy trap. Li Chu blinked. The little girl in red might not have even noticed her movements. The moment the sword light touched her body began to shatter. In the blink of an eye, she turned to ashes. In the face of this sword, screaming for help, Li Chu stepped forward calmly, drawing his sword monotonously, and striking with dull precision. A simple, unadorned sword light flashed by. Have you ever seen such reckless ordinary attacks? Actually reduced the vengeful spirit to nothing with a simple strike. After a flashy display of attacks, Li Sini was grabbed fiercely by the vengeful spirit by the throat. She felt that if she didn't help, this beautiful woman might die in the line of duty. Out of politeness, she still asked first. The only response she got was 2 words, help me. Now I can make my move, right? Chef Li obediently stood under the eaves, watching as the situation changed dramatically. Li Sini, in a moment of carelessness, fell into the trap again. Although Li Sini had repeatedly warned herself not to act recklessly, but it's already too late. The little girl has already reached out her hands to her. Her slender arms suddenly transformed into a pair of 5-foot-long green claws. They tightly grasped Li Sini's neck. Oh no, Miss Li. The black hair covering her face automatically fell away, revealing her face. Bang! Li Sini's brain was violently shaken. Li Sini bit her tongue hard, to bring herself back to her senses, thinking of Xiao Ying's timid appearance. Li Sini hesitated with the sword she was about to stab. A twinge of sympathy flashed through his heart. In that moment of hesitation, the little girl kneeling on the ground suddenly raised her head. Turning around, she knelt on the ground. She lowered her head deeply. Crying, she said, I'm so scared. Please don't kill me, okay? I'll be good. In an instant, a flickering sword beam appeared. It hovered in front of his chest. He grasped it with one hand. Sister, don't kill me. The little girl in the red dress suddenly got up. The little girl's body fell to the center of the courtyard. Look at how weak he is. Although he isn't dead, he's not far from it. A dazzling silver light swept across his wrist. Although I don't know why Lee Sin hasn't killed this vengeful spirit for so long, he must have his own reasons. His own knowledge is limited, and the world cannot understand. The sword raised, the fulling formation erupted. So magnificent, so dazzling. Such grandeur in controlling the ghostly mist, savagely thrashing about in the sky. The black mist sprayed out in clumps. Just looking at it is a visual shock. Like streaks of meteors, they struck the resentful spirits in midair, dispersing the dark mist, almost completely surrounding the ghostly figure in red. Li Chu was also astonished. With a rising sense of envy, it was stamped onto his frail body, like a spider web wrapping around him. What burst forth was not blood, but a thick, dark mist. 18 swords rose and fell in succession. The spirit let out a shrill scream. Black hair flying wildly. His face, however, remained concealed. After he was struck, a huge gourd vine imprint appeared in midair. Seeing the red figure rushing toward them, Lee Sin grasped the sword scroll. She shouted urgently. A streak of cyan light, carrying the captive, pierced the air. It struck the vengeful spirit. At this moment, Li Chu added the final line, "Your family is all dead." A perfect trifecta of quality. Then there was a loud explosion. All the barriers in front of the little girl exploded. His resentment was ignited. He continued, "You are an orphan." The ominous wind rises again. The chill invades. The little girl turned around. Her red dress began to billow fiercely. He was about to disappear. Then Li Chu said, with concern, "Your mother is dead." His steps halted. His figure froze. Seeing this, Li Chu knew it worked. Chef Li contemplated for a moment, gently guiding the little sister. The little girl in red paid no attention. He walked forward on his own. His figure gradually faded. "Keep him here," Lee Sin urged. "This vengeful spirit is already very powerful. If we let him leave, who knows what kind of trouble might arise." "Oh," the little girl in red replied. Yu turned around. It seemed she was about to leave. "I can't let him go. I need to find a way to stir his resentment." Lee Sin shook her head. "No," the little girl turned to Li Chu again. "Do you have any family?" Li paused for a moment. He answered that there is no one left in this world. Lee Sin reminded me again without saying a word. "You must not act." Li Chu nodded obediently. Suddenly, a gentle voice came from the wind, asking, "Do you have family?" It was the little girl asking. That is, Li Chu was hard of hearing, and after just a few words, suddenly heard the eerie wind change direction. It became suddenly strong. The old thatched house in the courtyard swayed precariously in the wind. A wave of extremely uncomfortable cold air rushed in. At that time, it depends on whether I show any flaws. Perhaps I accidentally got swept away by the huge wave you stirred up. That way, I could also fall victim. But there's another possibility. If your water is enough to overflow my mountain peak, then I will naturally be immersed in it. At your disposal. Sometimes your water, although not enough, is still enough to overflow the mountainside. Steady as ever, Lee Sin watched his belated reaction. And a black question mark appeared above her head. This illusion attack was like a flood overwhelming both divine stones. One side is water. One side is a mountain. What illusion technique? He only grew cautious after he finished speaking. Hanya turned his head. His gaze wary. Scanning his surroundings. Lee Sin's face turned red as she looked at Li Chu. "Why, weren't you affected by his illusion?" Under his gaze, Li Chu slightly opened his eyes for a second, and slowly asked back, "Illusion?" Muttering, I just. Li Chu said, "You just had your eyes tightly closed." Flushed face, trembling all over, and kept calling me, "Dad." Lee Sin suddenly woke up from the illusion. She realized it was Li Chu who had pushed her shoulder. Lee Sin shook her head, as if in a daze from a deep dream. She was breathing heavily. He hits himself as hard as he hits mother. Mother teaches him to endure, so he obediently endures, and that's how it went on for a long time. They always carry scars on their bodies. His mother was pressing his head. "Let yourself call him father." This father gets drunk and hits mother. He hits her very hard. Brother will learn from him. She was still in this room. And the surrounding scenes instantly came to life. He saw his mother. A woman not very old, but already hunched over at an early age, that it made a young woman call out, "Father." The song echoed in her ears, and the scene before Lee Sin suddenly shifted drastically. Her body suddenly shrank into a little girl about 3 or 4 years old. Suddenly, a song began, "Brother killed me, mother killed him. Father killed mother, I killed father." What kind of vengeful spirit could be so cruel? It was as if children were laughing and chanting. It was everywhere, clear and ethereal, yet with a hint of eeriness. Then I heard that voice shift. "This is what you call professionalism. In comparison, the method of driving away evil is quite monotonous." Just as I was reflecting, Suddenly the sound of comrades drifted around. It's just a relatively basic sword and spear ambush formation. Heh, it's definitely easy to handle a small vengeful spirit. It will be a piece of cake. Lee nodded. He sighed inwardly. At that time, every captive will carry a strand of my sword aura. This talisman technique is called the sword rising talisman. And there are 18 sword rising talismans, 1 positive and negative 9 palace formation. Things will get troublesome. Lee Sinny begins to arrange the captives in the courtyard. Lee Sinny explains that these talismans were specially taken from the storage of the Chaotiank to deal with the haunted house. Then I will use the treasure, the sword of blessing produced by the Dan Ding Gu, to stabilize them. Lee Sinny looked at Li Chu seriously for a moment. Not on my watch. Don't act rashly. Resentful spirits are different from ordinary ghosts. Once you provoke him. The body was icy cold. There were 2 ghostly handprints left on his neck. It's a clear sign of possession by a vengeful spirit. Chen Yingying's body was found behind the mountain. He also died from falling down the slope. Fong Lu was killed by a blunt object strike to the back of the head. Fong Gang was poisoned to death. The reason it's determined as a vengeful spirit's doing is because of the wind. He strangled himself to death. Someone who went to the fields noticed something strange. The Fong family's door wasn't open. All the poultry and dogs in the yard were dead. A brave villager went in to check and saw a horrifying scene. The result of catching a man-eater. Last night, a villager saw Fong Lu searching for her daughter in the village. They say Yingying went missing, but they probably haven't found her yet. Early this morning, daughter Chen Yingying. Both Fong Da and Fong Lu have been divorced. Fong Da's previous wife was beaten to death by him. Fong Lu's previous husband died of illness. They each brought a child into the marriage. The tragedy happened at the Fong family in Xiaolu village. There are 4 members in the Fong family. Father Fong Da, son Fong Gang, mother Fong Lu. His expression was serious. Of course, it's not about the money. As practitioners, we originally have the duty to eliminate demons and maintain the Tao. Li Chu and Li Sinny walked along the riverbank for 2 or 3 miles. They arrived at Xiaolu village, where the ghost incident occurred. Having a local person to help me will solve the ghost case better, right? Li Chu pondered for a moment. Then I will give the reward as originally planned. Li Sinny waved her hand. Li Chu nodded. Oh, why wouldn't you need me? Li Sinny's eyes twinkled. And she said with a smile, they just arrived here. They don't understand the situation yet. I humbly present myself as the Taoist from the Dian Temple outside Yuhang town. Since Li Chujia has a high-ranking official from the Chaotiank here, I guess I won't be needed, right? What he really meant in his heart was, so my reward is probably gone, right? Her voice was crisp, her tone soft. Zhou Dafu, who had fallen to the ground, sighed. The speed of her changing expression was terrifying. Li let out a quiet sigh. As Zhou Dafu collapsed to the ground, a radiant young woman appeared behind him. The young woman gazed at him gently. Her smile was as beautiful as a flower. Hello, I am Li Sinny, a purple-clad guard of Chaotian Palace. Zhou Dafu called out to Li Chu. Daoist Li, sorry about that. A swift and clean karate chop struck the back of his neck. It promptly interrupted his next words, her hairpin swaying, and his robe fluttering. In that instant, it felt as if all the glowing skies had converged on him, like an immortal descended from the heavens. What a handsome trickster. Curious to see what this Taoist looked like. So she saw a young Taoist priest with clear, cold features, and gentle eyes. Wearing simple, clean blue robes, standing beneath a poplar tree outside the door. The Taoist I invited has arrived. I'll send him back right away, Zhou Dafu said briefly, then turned around to greet him. Li Sinny followed her outside as well. He might indeed have the suspicion of being a foreign devil. During this period, don't let him come here. We are discussing this matter. Suddenly, a clear voice rang out from outside the main gate. Is Constable Zhou here? Shang Wanbo's gaze lingered on her ugly face. I will stay here for a while. I will thoroughly investigate the source of evil in Yuhang town. As for the head constable Zhou, the one you invited, I didn't request the officials from Chaotian Gate. Because there's indeed a Taoist temple in this area. There are people practicing there. It was easy enough to invite them, so I didn't want to trouble them. Of such profound abilities that they can help you solve multiple ghost cases. Zhou Dafu Dao. I've been a constable for years. I wouldn't say I've always been perfect in my duties, but I would never dare deceive my superiors. Why don't you ever seek help from us, the people of Chaotiank? Instead, you always spend imperial bounties to hire external cultivators to eliminate evil spirits. I'd like to know as well, is Yuhang town, such a small place, really home to a cultivator? I wouldn't fabricate the Liang Qiuan spirit case in just 3 days. But the results of my investigation are indeed like this. I can't be lying, can I? Li Sinny smiles in a way that's neither cold nor warm. If you have nothing to hide. Zhou Dafu wears a pained expression. Miss Li, I'm also puzzled. Why are there so many evil spirits under my command? I'm not a fool. Even if I'm making up a story, There's no ghost in the case. Chief Zhou, you have a guilty conscience. If you can't solve the case, you'll blame it on evil spirits. Heaven and earth bear witness. This time, there have been 2 vengeful spirit cases in just 3 days. I'm very curious about what secrets lie within the small town of Yuhang. Evil continues to thrive here. Or is it discrimination? Just call me Miss Lee. I heard that a series of vengeful spirit cases have been occurring in your jurisdiction. Why are there frequent disturbances in the town of Yuhang under your control? In the past year, you reported 6 cases of disturbances. He smiled and said, I am the head of the constables in Yuhang town. Zhou Dafu has met the gentleman from the Shangguan family. With 2 long strides, he quickly reached Zhou Dafu's seat. He boldly sat down. We have no subordinate relationship. The visitor is Li Sini from the Kaodiank residence in Hangzhou. The court has sent an order, specially in charge of ghostly matters and evil spirits, has the authority to execute before reporting. Zhou Dafu wiped his cold sweat. It is 7 inches long and 5 inches wide. The front is carved with a towering pagoda. The back is inscribed with 3 prominent characters, Kaodiank. The plaque fell from the sky. It crashed down with a clang on Zhou Dafu's table. It's okay, as long as your looks are good enough. You'll just be a handsome scammer. In the government office, Zhou Dafu received a new case. Suddenly, a sign was thrown at him. The plaque was made by Chen Tai. Li Chu politely declined Zhou Dafu's offer. Zhou Dafu thought Li Chu was shy. I think Li Chu looked up and said that there was no need to spend money on such things. What if someone accidentally mistakes you for a scammer? Let's go have some fun with the girls. Treat the girls well. Li Chu was confused. Zhou Dafu smirked mischievously. I mean, let's go to Chunman Lu. Before leaving, she surprisingly leaves a tip for Li Chu. Seeing Li Chu walk out of the room, Zhou Dafu immediately approaches. He tugged on Li Chu's sleeve. In a low voice, he said, how about we guys celebrate tonight? Li Chu releases the sword sheath with his right hand. With a blank expression, he slowly opens his arms. It seems that a smile appears on the face of the lady. He lunges forward. The lady is transcended. The tone of the lady seems to be a bit shy. Li Chu opened his eyes. He stared at the lady's face. This face really isn't very pleasing to the eye. If this could alleviate his resentment, then maybe I can let it go. A ring of question marks instantly appeared above Li Chu's head. He really hasn't seen much of the world. I didn't even know there was a process for exorcising ghosts. I've never held such a handsome man in my life. The lady shook her head and sneered. A long red tongue flicked back and forth. The lady raised her head. A terrifying iron-faced visage looked at him. But if you, little Taoist, are willing to hug me. His voice calmed down. The lady has already let go of her grievances. Li Chu held the hilt of his sword, hesitating for a moment about whether to draw it. It's not that easy. Instead, he hesitated and took 2 steps back. He whimpered in his throat. After a while, he managed to say, what a handsome man. If Shui Daong looked this handsome, I might not hate him either. He raised both hands, preparing to pounce. His index finger, with nails growing long, reached out, but his long neck suddenly went stiff. His body was empty yet didn't leap forward. That was already in the room. In the silence, an unknown hanging figure appeared on the beam in front of the screen. A chilling voice echoed in the room. All men must die. Some wives are cheating at home. Some mothers are cheating at home. In short, everyone scatters like birds and beasts. A gust of wind rises. Suddenly, it extinguishes the dim light, and return them a beautiful home, but after settling the women in nearby inns. As it grew late, these constables all came up with excuses. Some said their mothers were sick at home, waiting for Yuan Lin to appear, but the constables in the Yamen are all very righteous. In front of the remaining women of the Shui family, they pounded their chests and boasted loudly, claiming they would definitely get rid of the evil spirits. Li Chu replied calmly, but please don't worry. I have other ways to help them pass on. It was originally agreed that Li Chu and a group of constables would guard the Shui family together. I'm not familiar with the rituals of Confucianism, Buddhism, or Taoism. Shui Yang's condition is a lingering effect. A Taoist wouldn't perform such rituals. Wasn't Constable Zhou asking you to perform rites for Madam? I really don't know much about reciting scriptures or performing rituals. Little Taoist, you must help me perform a proper ritual. If you need any incense or offerings for the altar, feel free to tell me. I'll prepare the best of everything for you. Li Chu hesitated for a moment. She was cold all over. At first, I thought someone had placed her corpse on the bed. Then she suddenly opened her eyes. After that, I fainted in fright. With her tear-swollen apricot eyes, she looked at Li Chu. I thought about getting out of bed from the other side. Then I discovered someone was there too. I quickly rubbed my eyes to take a look. I discovered that the woman on the left was the eldest daughter-in-law. Her face was full of innocence. What if he comes back as a ghost to take revenge on me? Then, last night at midnight, I remembered I was sleeping on the edge of the bed. Grandpa was sleeping on the inside. At that moment, I got up and found someone on my left, but I heard the servant say, everyone said the first wife was a courtesan. At that moment, I was extremely frightened. When I married in, I knew I was a concubine, but I never thought about competing for favor. Suddenly everyone over there was shouting, saying something happened to the madam. At dinner, I asked the master what was going on. He said the first wife had an accident and died, but she refused to accept it. My grandfather said not to bother with her, so they sent the madam to the side courtyard. Who knew, the next day, just yesterday morning, she then grabbed Li Chu's other arm again, and tearfully pleaded, you must protect me. Shui Yangshi began speaking haltingly. On the first day I married into this family, tea should have been served to the madam, but Shui Yang raised his tear-streaked face and glanced at Zhou Dafu. He glanced at Li Chu again. Xuanji shot a glare at Zhou Dafu. She twisted her body, shaking off his lecherous hand, pitiful and tragic, a young and beautiful widow, about to inherit the vast Shui family dowry. Chief Zhou was delighted, wanting to comfort him wholeheartedly. He did not forget to turn back and emphasize once again, that this is not about money. Naturally, he arrived at the academy. Shui Yang grabbed the arm of the handsome Taoist in front of him, as if clinging to his last lifeline. For my own peace of mind, I am naturally responsible for this matter. I will go greet my master now. The young Taoist, Gao Yi, Li Chu took a few steps toward the backyard. Zhou Dafu, busy enough to charge extra, knew Li's habits very well. He understood that staying overnight came with a different price. Upon hearing this, Li's brows immediately relaxed. Zhou Pudu spoke as if it were nothing. It must be another case of a ghost god in town causing chaos. He might need to stay there tonight. Li's eyebrows furrowed with concern. If he stays overnight in the town, won't the 322-day streak of keeping his speed record be broken? The important thing is that I like Taoists. Li Chu returned to Dian Temple. Soon footsteps could be heard outside. It was Zhou Dafu, a constable from the Yamen. He came looking for Li Chu, greeting him warmly. After all, who wouldn't like a handsome, humble, and polite little Taoist? Especially the young girls in the village. Whether he's handsome doesn't really matter. Just how handsome can one person be? Even a female ghost expects a tip. Just how popular are attractive people? Li Chu walks down the street, with villagers occasionally praising him. The second sword fell. Sure enough, that greenish shadow shattered. One sword to slay the ghost. There's nothing that can't be resolved with one sword. If there is, then just another sword. Over the years, it has lost its human shape, but its eyes still faintly show the emotions within. In He Yu's eyes, it wasn't much different. Li Chu gently lifted his hand. His eyes were filled with confusion and innocence. The intention is about to be revealed on this riverbed. Along with it, a faint blue shadow appears. That is the true form of the water ghost. A vacuum zone nearly 30 meters wide appeared. The dry, chaotic riverbed was exposed for a moment. Many unfortunate squid, confused, suddenly found themselves in the air. Their eyes instantly widened in shock. The great river flowed upstream, defying the world. A section of the slowly flowing river suddenly revealed itself from the middle. On both sides, water jets shot up several meters high in an instant, and they surged upward at a visible speed. At the spot where he swung his sword, just as the water ghost was feeling proud, the steel-straight man Li Chu was unmoved by the allure of women. He raised his hand and struck out with a sword. The sword sliced through the air. Immediately, the flowing river water came to a halt. Then Li Chu's eyes changed with the scene. A group of beautiful women appeared around him. Each one was as beautiful as a flower, but they refused to dress properly. This group of beauties squeezed up against Li Chu. Might lure you in. Arriving at the Black Water River, water demons stirred up huge waves and leapt from the water. The surrounding people screamed in fright. The water demon exchanged glances with Li Chu. In other places, water ghosts are mostly avoided by not going into the water. But in the Black River, even if you stand on the shore, just looking at the river's surface, over 100 years ago, there was a massive flood. Many people died in the Black Water River. There is a water ghost that absorbed many souls. The road has grown quite high. The water ghost in the Black River is particularly fierce. Li Chu is worried that he can't beat him, so he tricks him into giving Li Chu the money. Yuhang Town is near the estuary of the East China Sea. There are many rivers and water systems in the surrounding area. Among them is the Black Water River, crying about a century-old water ghost harming people. Li Chu's master, that old pervert, upon seeing the women, immediately patted his chest and agreed. Then, he turned around and pushed the task onto Li Chu. On 10 Mile Slope stands a temple called Dian Temple. He became a young Taoist at Dian Temple. In this dangerous world, the weak and helpless Li Chu has been slowly strengthening himself by relying on these even weaker ghosts. One day, a mother and daughter came to Dian Pass. He opened an ancient Xianxia game. Unexpectedly, he had unlocked a door to sin. When he woke up, he found himself in a strange world. Outside of Yuhang town, there's a place called 10 Mile Slope. A year ago, he was just a graduate who had just finished the college entrance examination. Because of a fatal mistake, he only ranked second in the province and was feeling gloomy. One boring afternoon. Nor does he possess any fancy system or super divine level artifacts. There is only one ability to level up by defeating monsters. You have to diligently grind small monsters every night. Only then can you slightly improve your insignificant strength. Li Chu has been in this world for almost a year. A lantern is sliced in half. A man must learn to endure loneliness, resist temptation, and slay the lantern spirits. After all, he doesn't have an old mentor with him, to simply level up to 100 first. In the Baoyuo dynasty, Yuhang town, Shirley Slope, Hangzhou, a young Taoist in a water and fire robe is wandering in this wilderness. From time to time, a ghostly lantern would be lured out of the darkness. He quickly moves to strike. You've never seen such a pathetic traveler. He's actually hiding in the beginner village, holding the weakest lantern jar. He has somehow leveled up to level 71. He has a small goal.